Councillor Kelly?
Yes, all fine.
Okay, can I ask everyone who isn't speaking if they remain on mute? Thank you. Chair, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Councillor Christine Banks. I'll be chairing this committee this afternoon. I have Councillors Pauline, Walton and Councillors Malcolm Kelly just to make a decision today. We've also got committee services, licensing officers, and we've got our legal services. So all I've got is Mr. Barry and Mr. Edwards. Is that okay? Is that okay? Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Over to you, Steve.
Hi. Steve Mumby's just come through.
Oh, I'll tell you.
Can you hear us, Steve?
Hi, yeah.
Okay. You're on mute, Chair.
All we've done up to now, Councillor Mumby, is introductions. So we're going to do Lago first, and we're going to do the same as what we did this morning. Lago, we'll look at the two applications, and then we'll deliberate at the end. So we'll give everybody a chance to talk on each of the applications, and then instead of deliberating at each one, which means you have to cut off the live stream and go back on it. So we'll do them both together, one after the other. So the first one we're working on is Lago. So over to you, Steve.
Afternoon, everybody. We're here today to look at the variation of a premises licence for Lago 20 Colquitt Street. The applicant for the premises is Pub Invest, and the application was received on the 11th of February. The premises is a nightclub bar with the following licensable activities being carried out: live music, performance of dance on the premises Monday to Sunday 11 till 3. Recorded music under the old version of legislation is permitted 24 hours a day. Late night refreshment Monday to Sunday 23 till 03. Alcohol on and off the premises 10 till 03. And opening hours 11 till 4. This application is solely for increasing the licensable activity hours on Thursday, Friday and Saturday to terminate at 4 o'clock. The premises obviously will shut at 4 o'clock on those days. During the application period, the applicants and the Merseyside Police entered into consultation and went through a series of matters to do with the proposals that were put forward in the application and conditions. The agreed conditions, now I've listed them as condition 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16. They've been agreed between the applicant and the police, and that they then withdrew their representation. We have our representations from two councillors, Hetty Wood and Steve Mumby, and that is the case for this particular application.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. Mr. Barry, over to you.
Right, Chair, good afternoon. Feels a little bit like deja vu, but I will try to be precise, concise and to the point. If I may start off by, I think, summarising the concerns that the councillors have put forward. Their concerns are as follows: an increase in crime disorder, intoxication, queuing disorder, congregation on the concert square, and general disorder due to longer hours and alcohol being taken off the premises. Road safety, detrimental effects on improvements to Concert Square, that those improvements have already taken place and they're concerned that they're going to roll back. The council also cite potential for underage drinking and nuisance to residents, as well as COVID-19 issues. Our response, again, being precise and concise and to the point. Merseyside Police, represented by Constable Perigo, put forward a raft of 16 conditions to tidy up the conditions of the long-standing premises licence and better promote all the licensing objectives in step with changes to legislation. That's something that Constable Perigo does on a routine basis, and to be honest, it's rather helpful. You look at some licences that have been long-standing, and the problems can be that those conditions are out of step with today's legislation. So give him his due, he's done a job of work on this, looked at the premises licence, looked at the issues in the area and said, right, this is what we would like. We've got to say that there's been no representations put forward by Weights and Measures, environmental health or residents in the area that we've been made aware of. And we have not been aware of any failed test purchases by the ATU, which kind of covers, I think, some of the issues with regard to underage sales. The premises also had sales on the premises licence since it was granted and is not subject to this variation. With regard to issues with the police and previous representations, hearings that we were at today, I did have the opportunity during our recess to speak to the licensing sergeant for Merseyside and ask him whether there were any, or there was any contact with any of the councillors within the area. To the best of his knowledge, and he is the licensing sergeant, no. So nothing has been raised with him as such. I haven't had the opportunity to speak to environmental health, but as I previously mentioned, environmental health didn't put forward any representations and neither did Weights and Measures. So hopefully with the raft of conditions that were agreed by the applicant, I didn't do this particular application myself, it's done by Mr. Edwards who's in the room, then we've negated most of the problems, if not all of the problems, put forward in the councillors' representations.
Okay, thank you for that. Couple of questions. How long has this business has been run by this person who's it's you, Mr. Edwards, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
How long have you run this business?
I've been employed by the company since 2013. The premises was bought by my company, I believe it was a year before I started, in roughly 2012. I don't know the exact date.
Okay. So have you had any problems where you've had been brought before a committee for a review, or any problems with the police over this business?
We haven't been taken to review for anything with regards to this premises now.
No. So what I'm asking is, your relationship, is it ongoing with the police? Do you have a relationship where the police come in, check you, licensing officers check you, and then you have meetings, so on and so forth? Not all the time, but ongoing.
Yes, Chair. I'd like to think we have a good working relationship with the police and licensing department of the council too. We regularly have open consultation with them on any matters, and I myself work every Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening, as well as day shifts. So I quite often meet the proactive team on a nightly basis as well, and speak to them face to face if there's any issues on a nightly basis.
Okay. So you've got a drugs policy. So if anybody is selling drugs in your business and you caught them, what's your procedure?
Our standard procedure, we've got zero tolerance for any drugs on our premises. Anybody who enters the premises is subject to the normal checks for ID and searching policies which we have in place, including knife ones. This obviously includes searches sporadically for drugs. Any drugs that are found on the persons trying to enter the premises, confiscated off them, and obviously not allowed into the premises. We do carry out roles within the venue.
Can you turn your mic off? I think Mr. Barry, turn your mic off, because carry on.
Sorry. Yeah, so we also carry out checks of the premises throughout the evening, both for security, staff members and management teams. That includes the toilet areas and public areas. And again, we have set procedures in place. Anything that's found is confiscated. People are regularly handed over to the police if it becomes an issue. We have a drugs box in cooperation with the police, which the police have a key to, which is emptied on a regular basis, as we do in most of our venues.
Okay, thank you for that. I may come back to you. I'm going to bring in Councillor Walton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Couple of questions regarding the conditions. I don't know whether it's best for yourself, Mr. Edwards, or for Mr. Barry to answer. Number 14, delivery of goods necessary for the operation of the business will be carried out at such time or in such a manner as to prevent nuisance and disturbance to nearby residents. Now, there's no times mentioned in there about this operation. And I wonder if you'd be willing to agree that between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. there will be no deliveries to the premises. And the second one is the movement of bins and rubbish outside the premises will be kept to a minimum after 2300 hours. I wonder if you would be willing to agree that the bins outside would not be used between 11 and 6 a.m. in the morning.
Could I just liaise with my client a moment on this particular point? No, Councillor, it would appear that that's fine. In fact, the bins themselves are kept on the premises until they're due to go out.
I was just thinking more, you know, of disposing of bottles that have been used inside the premises, sort of after 11 o'clock at night, and that's why I was asking for those times, basically.
Yeah, that's not a problem, Councillor. Yeah, if that was to be in agreement, not an issue.
That's brilliant. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Kelly?
No, I'm fine. I have no questions, thanks.
One question, Mr. Barry. Am I right to saying at the moment your operating hours are 11 a.m. or 04 a.m.? Am I right?
If you check with Steve Clare, because he's got the licence in front of him, I don't actually have it in front of me. I believe there's a longer opening hours than there is for the licenses of activities. We're not asking to extend that. We're just looking to get the licence of activity extended and the opening hours to match.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi. Yeah.
Steve to us.
The opening hours are 4. The activity hours are 3. And on the, I think it's the Friday, Saturday, Friday, Saturday,
Thursday,
Sunday.
Friday, Saturday.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They're looking to extend the activity hours, which is, you know, the alcohol and the music, until 4 o'clock. So earlier in the week, they'd have like a 1 hour cushion. At the end of the week, the activities would go to the closing time that they've got.
So, Mr. Edwards, your activities will go to 4 o'clock. So when will you stop selling then alcohol?
As a standard company policy, we stop serving alcohol either 30 or 15 minutes before, depending on the venue. In this particular venue, I believe we stop serving alcohol 30 minutes before closing time. That's purely to give people time to drink up, but it's a company policy. It's not something we have written to our licence.
Okay, thank you for that. Robin, have you got any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to bring in Councillor Mumby at this moment, and we may come back to you for further questions. Is that okay? Councillor Mumby, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to focus on one issue, a very simple point, the risk to public safety. Over 100,000 people have died of coronavirus in the last year. And if I'd been addressing this licensing application 2 years ago, none of what I'm about to say, I would be saying. I'm hoping in about 2 years' time, what I'm about to say will be irrelevant. But we have to look at what the implications are of this change to the licensing conditions now. I think we all saw the scenes in the autumn when bars reopened. We had a closing time, a uniform closing time of 10 p.m. I always thought that was a bad mistake. I believe we should have staggered time for closing times of licensed premises. But I think in all honesty, in all seriousness, it's not a policing issue, it's a public health issue. It's pretty obvious to have 4 closing times moved up to 4 a.m. increases the risk to public safety in terms of super spreading events. So as and when licensed premises can reopen, that increases the risk to public safety. There are other potential risks involved, but at the moment, that's the case. And in my view, it would be profoundly irresponsible for the licensing committee to agree to that. I said separately that I think there is a case for trying to agree amongst the licensed premises, and the owners of these premises are in a good position to do that, have staggered closing times, but that's not what's before the committee. So I think at the moment you have to address the question, will extending the licensing hours till 4 a.m. increase the risk to public safety? You cannot, in all conscience, in all honesty, say that it won't. And I honestly cannot understand how any responsible body, any responsible authority could agree to that. As I said, the police issues about I have no problem with the premises, no problem with their conduct, never had any complaints about them. The issue is, what is the effect of this change in opening hours like to be on public safety? And I think most people have seen about these applications have frankly been horrified. I completely sympathise with the problems facing the licensing industry. I've put in quite a bit of time and effort. In fact, we've used ward funds to support pubs, for example, in the Dingle in my ward, to try and get outside areas to serve behind. This is not the right way, though, to proceed, to bring in uniform later openings for all of the licensed premises. So, frankly, I beseech you not to agree this. And I think to go back and sit down with the owners, with the different bars, and try and agree a different schedule for opening. Because the thought of hundreds, if not thousands of young people drinking late into the night in these conditions, super spreading events, then coming outside, horrifies me. I remember at the time how it wasn't just the people being in the premises there around Council Square, but being packed outside. We had a shoot up in the numbers, particularly in Central Ward and Riverside Ward, where a lot of the young people, a lot of the students live. And I think it would be unconscionable that we would do anything to encourage that. This may well, and I pray it's not, be the case in a year or two's time, but for now it is. And that, it seems to me, is what you have to address. And that's why I believe it will be profoundly irresponsible to agree to this application. Thank you, Chair.
I've just got one question, Councillor Mumby. Did you not think to meet up with the police, the owners of the business, to sit around the table and discuss these issues that you had?
Well, firstly, Chair, it's not an issue for the police particularly. As I said, my focus is on public safety. As I've said in comments about it, I think it's up to the owners to talk to us. This came in before it was submitted to you. I will say another owner, not this owner, that's made a reasonable right application, did approach us. We've had a sensible conversation about opening hours. That's for the takeaway in Bowl Street. And we've agreed to a compromise and withdrawn our application. But it hasn't been the case with this owner. So my answer would be, I'm happy to talk. If they want to withdraw this application for now and sit down and talk with us, I'm really happy to do this. But what we've got before us is this application. As I said, I'd be really happy to look at, and I could support a phased opening thing. It could be, one hypothesis would be you agree 4 a.m. one night a week for one business, 4 a.m. for one night a week for another business, and so forth. But that's not what's before us. I would like to see phased closing and opening hours for different days for different premises. It's not beyond the wit of man to do that. But what you have before you is what you have before you, and I didn't put it there.
Councillor Walton, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kelly, do you have any questions?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just looking at the representation, and particularly, for instance, the prevention of crime and disorder, and I just wonder if Councillor Mumby would wish to expand on any concerns he may have in relation to that, whether he is aware of any issues specifically relating to these premises where there's been any crime and disorder, or concern that there may be some crime and disorder with these premises.
As I said before, my objections are not relating to this premises, but to the impact of a changing hours on the situation. Again, I'll repeat the incidents we had in the autumn, which included both super spreading events, in my view, and risk to public orders. And I think what we're likely to create is that situation later. The fact that people have longer to drink alcohol increases the risk of that. But frankly, if you ask me from this concern, public and disorder and public nuisance are there, but they're really opposite. They're not on the scale in terms of my concerns. My concern is public safety. The others are really absolutely second or third order issues. And public safety, public health is what matters to me.
And just in terms of, if you like, public safety versus public health, the guidance for us to consider is around the safety of public whilst they are using licensed premises, opposed to the public health issue, which the Licensing Act says is a consideration or a matter for other agencies and not the licensing, necessarily the licensing authority. And I don't know if you have a view or a comment on that. I suppose what I'm saying to you is our hands as a licensing authority could be somewhat tied a bit in terms of the public health issues that I think you're alluding to around the coronavirus and the possible spread of that. I think that's what you're possibly meaning.
Absolutely, Councillor Kelly. Let me respond because it's a serious point. But I don't think you would seriously argue that if somebody consumed heroin on licensed premises, or rather a drug with a delayed effect, that it only kicked in after they left the premises. That wouldn't be a serious concern, right? Now, the fact that people may consume drugs in lots of licensed premises, and I'm not talking 1 minute about these premises, right? You're not suggesting that the consumption of drugs in the premises could be discounted because they only affected people after they left. My point is that exactly the same applies in terms of public safety. If people are at risk of contracting coronavirus and the effects are only experienced after they leave the premises, you must take it into account. And to suggest that it's only what you can ignore what happens after people leave a particular premises seems to me to be wrong as a matter of common sense. Otherwise, you find yourself in a situation where if there was an issue of drugs being taken on, people could argue, well, they may have taken the drugs on the premises, but it didn't affect people till after they left into the public safety. So you have to take into account the impact of what happens in the premises, not just at the time people are there, but their impact on the individuals that they happen afterwards. That's my point.
Okay, that's all I've got. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Robin, have you got any questions?
No questions, thank you.
This moment, okay, thank you. Mr. Barry, response to Councillor Mumby's concerns, please.
Thank you, Chair. Whereby I can see where the councillor is coming from. It is a matter of public health as opposed to public safety. The Licensing Act in Scotland has 5 licensing objectives, one of which is public health. Unfortunately, in this country, in England and Wales, we do not. That notwithstanding, public health is a responsible authority, as listed in the responsible authorities list. They have not deemed to make any representation concerning public health issues. That notwithstanding, again, these premises, as with all the premises in the Pub Invest Group, are fully COVID risk assessed. And let's be clear on this, follow national guidelines. So they will only reopen when safe to do so, under national guidelines. Unfortunately, we can't take into account, once those restrictions are lifted, what will happen. I mean, indeed, the councillor could be right. We could be heading towards a 3rd lockdown if that happens, but this is not a consideration for this particular forum. We can only do our best within the Licensing Act And as I say, public health in itself is not part of the Licensing Act, although I can see that where the councillors come from. I do understand, but it's just not a consideration, no matter how much common sense it may appear to be.
Okay. Councillor Mumby.
Yeah, but briefly to respond. I mean, I'm grateful to Mr. Barry for making the point that you can't say what's going to happen at reopen. And the fact is, you have to confront the situation we're in. If and when licensed premises reopen, you won't have other restrictions in place on them except those that you impose. And frankly, a threat to public health is a threat to public safety. There may be different responsible authorities, but it's common sense. And if people are going into premises and there's a serious risk of them contracting coronavirus, that is a matter of public safety. Public health and public safety aren't sort of opposite light years of the universe. They're linked. So I think it's a matter of common sense, really.
Okay, thank you for that. Robin, have you got any questions?
No, I've no questions. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Okay, has anybody else got any questions to ask either Mr. Barry or Councillor Mumby this moment? No. I'm going to go to summing up. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. Barry, to sum up, and then I'll ask you, Councillor Mumby, to sum up. Is that okay? Okay, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I think, again, respectfully to the councillor, public health is an issue for another forum. We believe, and obviously Councillor Mumby, and I'm not saying obviously, but he said that he doesn't really have any other issues to think with these premises other than the issue of public health, and that appears to be in the round. We would have to reduce probably all licensed premises if we took into account with these licensed premises what the council is saying and said, right, well, other premises now pose a risk being open till 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock. We do have 24-hour licences within the city as well, and they will no doubt resume. Unfortunately, we can only keep in step with coronavirus legislation and with regard to the conditions that have been put forward and accepted by the responsible authorities. To say, it's interesting to note, public health, who are the experts within this field, didn't make a representation. Environmental health haven't made a representation. Weights and measures with regard to other issues that were within this particular representation put forward by the councillor didn't make a representation on residents. So if it's just solely hinging on public health, then respectfully I'd say that this licence should be granted as applied for. It's always within the gift of any councillor or individual or responsible authority that where there's a breach of licence conditions, that there's the opportunity to review the premises licence going forward and engagement in the future with regard to those premises if there's any issue before we get to that stage. But at this stage, we would ask that the committee look upon this application favourably and grant it as applied for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mumby, sum up, please.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be brief because I'll reiterate my point. Public health impacts on public safety, so it's certainly relevant to take it into account. You cannot, in all conscience, in my view, dismiss the idea that this is a threat to public health and therefore public safety. On that ground, you should refuse this application.
Okay, as I said, what we'll do is what we did this morning. We'll go on to the next application and we will deliberate at the end. So we're going straight on to, what a name, JSV OSheas. Steve, Claire, over to you.
Hi. Thank you, everybody. As I brought in, this is an application for the variation for the premises licence for Dirty OSheas. Again, Pub Invest Group. The premises is a nightclub bar. It has licensable activities of films, live music, recorded music, performance of dance, entertainment of a similar description to those, and also they are on the premises. The activities are Monday to Sunday, 8 until 2. Late night refreshment is Monday to Sunday, 23 till 02. Alcohol on and off the premises, Monday to Sunday, 8 until 02, with opening hours of 8 until 02. This variation is to increase the opening hours for all licensable activities on Friday, Saturday and Sunday to terminate at 4 o'clock. Again, as with the previous application, there was consultation with Merseyside Police, and they have amended conditions 4, 5, 8 on the existing premises licence, as noted in the report, and they've also added on conditions as well as agreed with the applicants. We didn't receive any representations from any of the responsible authorities, but received representations from 2 councillors. The committee have had the report, the representations, the applicant's proposals, and a copy of the premises licence. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Steve. Mr. Barry, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of repeating myself, I'll summarise the concerns of the councillors and then respond. The concerns of the councillors are an increase in crime and disorder, intoxication, queuing disorder, congregation on and about the area, general disorder due to long hours and alcohol being taken off the premises, road safety, detrimental effects on the area, and the councillors have cited the potential for underage drinking and nuisance to the residents, as well as COVID-19 concerns. Our response is Merseyside Police, the acknowledged experts in crime and disorder, have agreed conditions with the applicant to promote this licence and objective, the prevention of crime and disorder, to the extent that they, as experts, have deemed appropriate. Again, the premises operates a robust queuing system and has changed the very nature of these premises, which under previous ownership had lost its licence under tragic circumstances due to knife crime. And also of note, there have been no representations obviously put forward by the other responsible authorities or the ATU. It's got to be said, as a function of this and Pub Invest's commitment to the prevention of crime and disorder and trying to stop tragedies like this happening in the future, there was a considerable investment in bleed packs for the cab trade to attend a course run by surgeons from Liverpool Royal Hospital, as well as security staff from Nation and other security operators within the city. Pub Invest, this premises and their other premises have these bleed packs on site, which I think is a first for this city. They've done everything that they can to try to improve the nighttime economy within their own premises. I don't believe that since the change of management that there have been any issues whatsoever with Dirty OSheas from the former Empire Club. They would just like to keep step effectively with what's going on in the area. They do believe that there's a trade for these hours. They believe that they can operate these premises responsibly, and obviously, as we said before, there is the opportunity to review if necessary. I believe, Chair, at this point, there's not much more we can say until we hear the concerns of Councillor Mumby and address those concerns.
I've got a couple of questions. You just said that you have first aiders and medics on all your sites, is that right?
Well, there is a bleed pack and bleed pack trained staff, as well as, I think Mr. Edwards said previously that they do have trained first aiders, and on larger premises, medics as well. But I'll bring Mr. Edwards in to expand on that so that you get an accurate picture. I'll just mute.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. We do have a trained medic on the weekend, on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but not this particular premises. But there is one nearby because that we employ and pay for on Concert Square. What Carl Barry's referring to is we have bleed packs and trained staff and assigned first aiders within each of our venues as well, as you would in any other workplace or public place.
Another question. You've asked for the extended hours for Friday and Saturday and Sunday. Why Sunday?
If you allow me to expand on that, it's effectively because since rebranding the venue, we've changed it to what's effectively an Irish pub. Traditionally, an Irish pub, big night out is a Sunday evening, which is the main reason for it. It's traditionally you'll find a lot of the Irish pubs around the city get particularly busy on a Sunday evening with Irish customers.
Okay. Have you got any questions, Councillor Walton?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kelly?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to bring in Councillor Mumby. Councillor Mumby, over to you.
I'll be brief because we have rehearsed this argument before. My concerns are not related to the conduct of the premises, no criticisms of them, particularly in the past, but in relation to the public health risks of having a 4 AM licence. We think a public health risk is a threat to public safety, therefore it falls within the licensing objectives. And given the recent experience of people congregating in the area after premises closed and rapid spread of coronavirus in the autumn, we think it's a risk that shouldn't be taken. So we've been through the arguments before. I don't think we probably need to rehearse them all over again. So
thank you for that, Councillor Mumby. Mr. Barry, do you have any response to Councillor Mumby?
I think that my response is very similar to what I said on the previous hearing, Chair, in the fact that public health, possibly it should be, but it's certainly not a licensing objective. It doesn't fall under public safety. There is a body, public health, that can and could have made representations with regard to any concerns that they may have had, and they are the experts in the field. They have not. And with regard to today, we are looking at these premises as opposed to the wider issues surrounding society and indeed the spread of this horrible disease. We will be in step legally with the government in terms of the guidance on risk assessments, health and safety, and the phased opening of premises. I think no more than that, we can't do anything else apart from that, Chair. We must go with the government guidance. We must be in step with what the law says, and this is outside the forum to discuss, I believe, public health issues.
Councillor Mumby?
yes, sorry, I don't want to go on at length, but there does seem to be somewhat of an inconsistency in Mr. Barry's argument. Because if public health is not a relevant issue for licensing, there will be absolutely no ground for public health making representation. So their failure to comment would be irrelevant. However, in my view, it is relevant to public safety. So you can't have it both ways, really.
Yeah, Chair, if I can sort of qualify what would probably happen, and it would be similar to what would happen with environmental health. I would assume, for example, if a particular premises isn't following the guidelines in terms of risk assessments and whatever for COVID, and the public health found that there were issues there, I presume that the Public Health Authority could prosecute themselves, as could environmental health in terms of noise-related issues. And then what would be a consideration for us as a licensing committee is the fact that they have been prosecuted by those authorities independently and had a successful prosecution. We would then consider that as a licensing authority, opposed to environmental health necessarily coming straight to us with a concern about noise. They have the powers to deal with it themselves, and I think that's broadly what would happen in those situations.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kelly. Robin, do you have any questions for anybody?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Summing up. Right, Mr. Barry.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to my clients employees in this city, between 800 and 900 people. They're looking towards expanding that number, which could be up to 1,000 people in an area that we desperately need jobs in a time when we desperately need the economy to be driven up. However, they are not considerations for you as a licensing committee. We do believe that we've shown due diligence in engaging with all those that have made representations at the point that they've been in contact with us, such as the police. The police contacted the applicant during the 28-day period, made their issues and their concerns known, and from there sought agreements on conditions and a tidying up of the premises licence. As I mentioned on previous hearings, very often these premises licences can be outdated, outmoded, and it gives the opportunity with the police to actually tidy those things up. With this particular premises, obviously it has had a checkered past since taking over, and the demographic has completely changed, and the premises has not had, I believe, a single complaint with regard to any authority or resident in the area. Again, I do take into account what Councillor Mumby says, and he feels strongly about this, and I can understand why. However, I would say that it's not an issue that can be addressed through the licensing committee or be taken into account by the licensing committee when deciding on the licence. And we would ask that this licence is granted as applied for, please.
Thank you. Councillor Mumby, sum up.
Yeah, I'm grateful to Councillor Kelly for agreeing with me that clearly public health issues can be a public safety issue, because as you said, if public health made representations, you would have to consider them. So the issue is simply, I mean, I think it's common sense. Public health are probably rather busy at the moment, dealing with a desperate pandemic that's killed thousands of our fellow citizens. I think if you look inside yourself, look in your hearts, look in your souls, can any member of the licensing committee say that they don't think that if these premises, in current circumstances, when restrictions are lifted, are reopened and open till 4 AM, that is not going to create greater risk to public health? I think you have to say yes. If you say yes, you have to recognise that's a threat to public safety and reject this. It's really simple. It's not complicated. And I think you can try and quibble about the law, but I think it's actually been conceded reluctantly by Mr. Barry and implicitly by Councillor Kelly that public health is a public safety issue, and therefore you have to take it into account. And you don't need you shouldn't need representation for public health, or frankly from me, to recognise the serious risks involved in it.
Okay, thank you for that. What we'll do now is we'll deliberate over the two licences, and we'll make a decision today. That decision will be forwarded on. It will probably be email because of the post and problems with the post. If anyone has a problem and is not happy with our decision today, they have 21 days to appeal our decision through the Magistrates' Court. If that be the case, I do suggest you seek legal advice. But I thank you for your